No, you could say, if you wanted to be an ironist on this point, I could help you, if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Making the offer. No, you could say that the war on the inference of weapons of mass destruction was based on an argument from design, of the kind that some people use to prove the existence of supreme beings. In other words, a country that had a government that had previously not only possessed, acquired, but also several times used these weapons, and that had been known to have a ministry especially devoted to concealment of them from inspectors, and had been caught cheating on inspectors many, many times, could be assumed not to be sincere when it claimed that it had got rid of all its weapons. But from the previous designs that were definitely noticeable, an inference of a continuing possession could be made. By the way, I think that's a perfectly reasonable position.
The war was launched by people with a professed contempt for the evidence-based, reality-based community, as it's called. Was it not? I mean, the larger point is simply is faith the problem, or faith armed, faith militant, faith.
This is changing the subject, but it's a change of subject. But I'll be patient with it if you don't mind. Once more, no, there was nobody in the world of any knowledge, from Hans Blix to Jacques Chirac, who thought that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. No, so there also wasn't the basis on which the war was launched. The war was launched to return Iraq to compliance with the United Nations resolutions, governing not just the weapons, but a number of other matters as well, very important ones. So I think we just have a disagreement on fact here, but there's no wish element involved.
Is the mission to abolish religious thinking? Is it to abolish churches, synagogues, mosques? Chris Hitchens, what is the remedy?
To get people to outgrow, I think, the solutions that were offered to our problems in the childhood of the race. That's the quickest way I can think of putting it. We are fortunate in having minds that do seek for patterns and do seek for explanations. And even intelligent, educated people will often believe in a conspiracy theory rather than no theory at all, because the mind does demand explanations. But religion comes from the infancy of the species, when we didn't know that germs were the cause of disease. We thought God punished people with diseases. We didn't know that the earth was round. We didn't know that it circulated around another sphere. We didn't know anything of that sort. But there had to be answers. And it becomes very obvious when you look at how these inadequate answers were come up with and given divine sanction, that religion is man-made. And it shows. It shows that it's made by a fairly poorly evolved mammalian species that's 1/2 chromosome away from being a chimpanzee.
Hold it there. I want to...
well, there's one very serious consequence I must mention of that, which is, because it's man-made, a lot of these gods get made. Man doesn't make just one god. That would be bad enough. Makes several, and then starts to quarrel over which is the right one. And religious warfare and religious disputation have retarded the development of civilization by millennia already.
The subject
now threaten to put an end to it.
Exactly. The subject is God, not great, says Christopher Hitchens, our guest, and religion, which poisons everything, in the subtitle of his book. I want to introduce Eddie Glaude, Jr., professor of religion at Princeton. His new book is called In a Shade of Blue, Pragmatism and the Politics of Black America. Eddie Glaude, is religion something that the species can outgrow, should have outgrown, will ever outgrow?
Well, it's always been a kind of wish. First, let me thank you for inviting me to this conversation.
Thank you for joining us, Eddie.
This is going to be wonderful. I've really enjoyed listening to Mr. Hitchens over the course of this conversation so far. I think it's been a wish of moderns that we would outgrow religion, that somehow religion represents the vestige of that which is primitive, that which was before we came to understand ourselves as having the capacity to reason, irrespective of forces outside of ourselves. And so there's always been this kind of wish of those of us who consider ourselves moderns, as it were, that we leave behind the so-called childish things as we move forward on the wisdom that is science and the power that is reason. And we know that modernity's prophecies about religion, about nationalisms, about a range of things were wholly inadequate, just failed miserably on so many different levels.
Do I hear a but coming? I mean, can it be done?
For me, I don't think it's necessary for us to leave religion aside. I think part of the problem with the evolutionary model that Mr. Hitchens is putting forward is that it presumes a very narrow understanding of what religion signifies. I have three worries after reading the book, and I really wish we were in dialogue more often. I wish he was in my Introduction to the Study of Religion course, because I think there are three areas that are really interestingly problematic. One is a categorical problem. Hitchens tends to use the categories of religion, belief, faith, as if these terms are not contested, as if the meanings are quite clear. I mean, we know that religion as a category to describe certain practices is relatively young, right? I mean, it derives from the word ligare, to bind, but it to kind of yoke the ways in which moderns understand religion to that of the ancients is really is a bad move. And then also to reduce religious practices to belief claims, to their cognitive claims. That is to say, to think that what constitutes religion, right? I mean, I think one of the big problems that Mr. Hitchens puts forward is that religion wholly misrepresents the origins of man and the cosmos. That it's just simply wrong in its in its claims about the world, and that's supposed to signal something.
But does that mean religion isn't supposed to be rational?
Well, it doesn't. It's not. It's not that it isn't supposed to be rational. It's just that rationality is not the ultimate criteria by which to judge it. You see what I mean? I mean, there's a sense in which the idea of the veracity of the claims that are being put forward constitutes the measure by which we value it, right? Reduces religion to a question or to the issue of its faith claims, right? When in fact religion, if we're going to, and that's always in inverted commas for me, religion signals so much more. I mean, there are ritual practices that orient the person to the world and to their fellows in particular sorts of ways, and those ritual practices are not reducible to belief claims.
Somebody noted on our site, and I loved it, that John Updike, a religious man, says church is the only place where he can sing in public. and he's sort of tipping his hat to the ritual pleasure of a shared celebration.
Nothing could delight me more than the thought of Mr. Updike doing that, as long as he isn't helping to give a fair wind to some preacher who wants to change the law so that I have to believe this too.
This is one
or
of
that my children have to. If it makes them happy, let them do the clapping and the hollering, but don't let them start telling me, hey, have I got news for you, and you're going to find it out when we change the Constitution to make America a Christian country.
But this is another one of the tensions in your book. I mean, there's this kind of liberal postulate, right, that presumes the private-public distinction, right? That is, you're free to believe whatever you want to believe in private. Don't come out and try to proselytize to me. But at the same time, when you make that claim, right,
I don't mind them trying to proselytize, but I do mind them wanting to change the law.
Say, well, you are free to believe what you want to believe in the privacy of your own home, in the privacy of your own heart. You want to make that claim, but then you turn around and say, you nevertheless spend an enormous amount of energy in the book deriding those who would hold such beliefs. Right. That is to say, even though you have someone who might make the case, right, that I'm not someone who would run around thinking about the infallibility of the Bible. I'm not one who's running around calling myself a fundamentalist. I'm not one who wants to justify all sorts of heinous actions with God talk. But nevertheless, God talk means a lot to me. You still want to say that to hold that belief, right, is irrational.
Yes, and also that though
right? Am I right?
You are quite right,
okay.
and I think unreasoned and irrationality is dangerous on its own. And second, actually, the Christian belief seems to me to necessitate an interference in the lives of others, because quite apart from anything else, I mean, to put it at its nicest, you don't want me to go to hell, so you feel you're doing me a favor by interfering and stopping me from going there. That would be the mildest form it would take. In other forms it takes, it says, well, we don't want contraception to be used, and so we're not going to let anyone else use it either. It's not that we forbid it to our congregation.
But you would admit, though, Mr. Hitchens, that there are a whole host of Christians who would contest that claim on Christian grounds. There are Christians who can find arguments on the basis of Christian.
No, I don't know how on Christian grounds they could. No,
of course they do. They do it all the time. And part of the problem with the text...
I don't say they can't as Christians do it, but I don't know of any Christian grounds for it, any more than I know of Christian grounds for